EXP has announced they're going to be doing co-sponsorship as part of the revenue share model effective April 1st of 2025. So that's just around the corner. So why is this important? Well, it's important because revenue share is a big part of a model for a cloud-based brokerage that offers the ability to share back part of their revenue that comes in to agents within the company that are responsible for bringing in other agents into the company through the methods of attraction or recruiting and helping that company grow. And the main part of earning revenue share for that agent depends primarily on which agent that comes to the company they name as their sponsor. You see, that allows the agent who brings the new agent into the company to earn a portion of the revenue that this agent pays to the company as part of their split whenever they do a real estate closing or transaction. And right now in the cloud-based brokerage space, there are two main players that are dominating the landscape, and that is EXP and Real. Now, there are others that have crept into the space here recently that are gaining some ground, and that is LPT and Epic Realty. But they're very small compared to Real and EXP, and Real and EXP are the only two that also have gone public on the NASDAQ in terms of a publicly traded company. So for that reason, and the fact that these two companies are the only ones now that will have a type of co-sponsorship to the revenue share program, we're going to focus on the comparison of EXP's new co-sponsorship program and Real's already in place co-sponsorship revenue share that has been in place for about 2 years now at this time. Now, hold on. You may have seen that I am with Real. I've been with Real for over 2 years, and so you're gonna think, oh, he's gonna be biased towards Real. So this video is educational and informative only. I'm gonna lay out the data and the facts of both, comparing one versus the other, and you get to choose based on the data which one you think might be best suited for you. Now for the fun part, let's dive in. Let's first talk about Real's co-sponsorship revenue program. It's been around for over 2 years now, and it's been in effect, and it has done really, really well for the company and the agents that it serves. So the reason that Real came up with this co-sponsorship idea over 2 years ago is because they wanted to have a one Real culture and that network of one Real horizontally, not just vertically in terms of their structure, and their agents all feeling that no matter which network or whose network they joined under, they had the ability to collaborate back and forth amongst the different networks as they went deep in terms of lines of agents coming into the company. So really this was based off a culture move for the company, and they wanted to put their money where the mouth is and therefore have fractional or co-sponsorship so that an agent over here in this network could sponsor another agent in this network, or if an agent got to the bottom of their 5 lines they can open up with revenue share, they had a chance now to go infinite lines because they can co-sponsor not just with agents in other networks, but they can co-sponsor within their own network in different areas. So it is limitless in terms of how big your network could get being with Real with the way their co-sponsorship is structured. So for the ability to explain this well, in this example, we're going to use hypothetical names, okay? And we're gonna start with Greg. Greg is the new agent who's looking to join either EXP or Real, and he's curious about co-sponsorship, so he wants to know what's it gonna look like once he enters the company, because Greg knows 2 people that he wants to name as co-sponsors for many different reasons. That's why he wants to do that. So Greg's a new agent, and he wants to name John and Megan as his 2 co-sponsors. Well, John and Megan both are already Real agents, so they're already in the revenue tree somewhere as they joined sometime in the past. Now you can see in John's network, he was brought in by Matt, and Matt was brought in by Brad, who's above Matt. And then over time, John has also brought in Joe in his line 1, Kevin in his line 2, Kim in his line 3, Ted in his line 4, and Kristen in his line 5. So for demonstration purposes, that is just one line within Joe's current network. Now conversely, Megan also has been with Real for quite some time. When she joined the company, she was brought in by Shannon. Shannon was brought in by George, who are above her in the revenue share tree network. And then over time, Megan has brought in Brian in her line 1, Justin in her line 2, Kelsey in her line 3, Nolan in her line 4, and Lori in her line 5. And again, this is just one line within Megan's vast network that she has over at Real. So here comes Greg. Greg wants to join, and he wants Megan and John, if at all possible, and Real says, absolutely, it is definitely possible, and we would love to have you guys be co-sponsors if that's what y'all want to do. So Megan and John happily agree, and this is what it looks like. Greg now starts a whole new line with John and Megan as his co-sponsors. Greg is in the line 1 of John and line 1 of Megan, both at 50% in terms of qualifying for a line 1 producing agent. So Greg, as a producing agent, will now count for a half of a person to open up lines within the revenue share tree. So obviously, if you have 2 co-sponsors somewhere in your network in your line 1, that would count as 1. So obviously, you have 2 co-sponsors in your line 1 somewhere in your network, that would count as a total of 1 in your overall network in terms of producing agents. But going back to Greg's line, now Greg, over time, he brings in Barb, which is in Greg's line 1, but it would be in John and Megan's line 2. And then Barb brings in Brittany and Jeff, Melinda, and so on and so forth. So it's cool because this will keep going on and on and on, depending on how the co-sponsorship works. And you have no limit as a co-sponsor as to how many agents you want or choose to co-sponsor into the company. Now notice in Greg's line, it's actually not 50% in terms of the payout. It's 50% in terms of opening up qualifying or producing agents for other levels in your network, but it's 45% in terms of payout to Megan and 45% payout for anything Greg and his line produces below him to John. And that continues to roll up through John's network to Matt and Brad, and through Megan's network through Shannon and George. And then 10% will go to Real. Now, Real has set aside 10% to go to the company for operational cost and profitability to continue to make sure that this revenue share is operated correctly and all the accounting technology is in place to make sure all the payouts happen in real time automatically. So now this is Real's co-sponsorship system that has been working great for well over 2 years. Now let's talk about EXP's new co-sponsorship. Same scenario. You have Greg, who's a new agent who has 2 people that he wants to name as co-sponsors, and they are John and Megan, and he's looking at moving to EXP. John and Megan have both been with the company of EXP for quite some time. They were brought in by other people. In this case, John again was brought in by Matt and Brad, and Megan was brought in by Shannon and George. But here comes Greg, and he wants to have both of them as co-sponsors. EXP says, okay, we now have this new program starting April 1st, and so you can do that. But now an EXP system is a lot different from Real's, and here's how. Of the 2 co-sponsors, both of them cannot be equal. One of them has to be the main sponsor, and the other one has to be the co-sponsor or the secondary sponsor, if you will. Now, for the main sponsor, they will get the benefit of actually having all of the revenue that Greg and people below him over the course of time produce as revenue to the company. All of that will continue to flow up to John and to Matt and Brad above him in his line. But for the secondary sponsor, Megan, unfortunately, any of that revenue that Greg and his line below him produces in the future will only flow up to Megan, and it stops right there. So Shannon and George and everyone above them get 0 benefit from the revenue that Greg and his line produce in the future. So that is a big difference from EXP and Real's system. Now going back to the main sponsor, John, also notice that Greg will not be on his line 1. Now in Real's system, if you know the revenue share system, their highest payouts are at the top lines. So your highest payout is in your line 1 agent, and then so on and so forth. It decreases from there. EXP's is different. They have their highest payouts as you go down in the revenue share tree. So Greg being in your line 2 doesn't allow you to be paid off any production Greg does as a line 1 agent. But the benefits are that it does count for a qualifying FLQA, they call it, first line qualifying agent, or as Real calls it, a producing agent status. It does allow you to have that count to be able to unlock different levels in their revenue share. That is a benefit, and you get the full stock bonus when that person closes their first deal as the attraction stock bonus. And the secondary co-sponsor, Megan, that slides into line 1 under John in that tree, actually receives the fast start bonus just for year 1 and year 1 only for being in that line 1 for anything that Greg does, because Greg is now under her as her line 1 and John's line 2. So again, any revenue that Greg and his line below him produce in the future for the company that they share back will flow half to Megan and half to John, but it'll continue to go up in John's network and it will stop at Megan. So Shannon, George, and everyone else above them receive no benefit from Megan being a co-sponsor with Greg. So right there are a lot of differences between EXP and Real's co-sponsorship program. But the other main difference, I think that's probably the biggest one, is the caveat with EXP is that if you are already in a line with somebody, you cannot co-sponsor with anyone in that line up and down that tree. Whereas with Real, you absolutely can, which is great because it allows you as somebody who might be, up here in like say level 0, and you have a 7th person or an 8th person down here, 8 levels below you, you won't get paid off that 8th person. But if that 8th person wants to name you and someone else, in that line on, say, your line 4 as co-sponsors, it's amazing because then you guys combine and break off as a new leg, and now you have the ability to earn additional revenue share off someone in your line 8. Whereas with EXPs, you would have no way to do that because you cannot co-sponsor with somebody already in your own line. You're only able to co-sponsor with somebody who's outside of your network, your line. And that is just a rule that they have set in place, which unfortunately is a big difference between EXP and Real's co-sponsorship model. So which one would be more advantageous for you? Well, you can do some case studies and actually put some numbers into the revenue share. You can go back and look at the revenue share case studies I have done in the past on this YouTube channel and see which one would be the biggest payout for you potentially based upon how you want to grow your network. But what is best for you? Which one is easiest? Which one is more easy to understand and is able to allow you to scale? I'll leave those answers for you to decide. If you do believe it is EXP, we wish you the very, very best in that decision. We truly do. But if it is Real, we would love to have a conversation with you further about it, and we could do a deep dive into your current model, your current brokerage versus Real and what that would save, plus the additional ways to make money at Real. And then we can break down things like revenue share and co-sponsorship in that model and what that may look like for you in the future if that's something you have interest in. We would love to chat with you. Give me a call at 480-660-5974. Anytime, love to take your call. You can text. We'll get right back to you. This company literally has changed my life after selling real estate for 20 years. So give me a call at your convenience and make it a phenomenal day.